Hi, this is Brass Check. It's March 21st, 2020, and this is a coronavirus update. I sure wish I could just point you to intelligent commentary. There is some, but there isn't a whole lot. Let's look at a basic item here. Someone has done a back of the envelope calculation, rough calculation, and the current method that the United States is using to suppress the pandemic is going to cost the U.S. economy approximately $1 trillion per month. $1 trillion per month. And it may end up killing more people than if we follow a method that I've been suggesting now for a while, which is quarantine and support the vulnerable, and let the rest of the population run around and develop herd immunity to this thing. We know who the vulnerable are: the frail elderly, the obese. Sorry, I know it's not nice, but obesity is a predictor of death in this case. Smoking, a predictor of death, even among young people. When you see the young people that are getting it, in at least one case, the person was a smoker. What else is a predictor? Well, if you already have lung problems like emphysema, if you can't walk up a flight of stairs without getting winded, you are vulnerable. Diabetes makes you vulnerable. Having heart disease makes you vulnerable. So we know. And the Italians, by the way, the Italian Ministry of Health has done a study based on their very extensive experience now, and 99% of everyone who's died of this thing had at least one underlying pathology. At least one, some 3, 4, 5. So we could quarantine everybody, which is what we're doing, and shut down the economy and pay a $1 trillion bill for that. $1 trillion is a lot of money. I mean, that sounds like a lot of money these days. It's a deep hole. And every month that we continue this, it's going to cost us another $1 trillion. So we could do that and possibly not succeed and possibly end up killing more people, or we could get smart and tell all the people that have vulnerabilities, if you've got one, you are responsible to quarantine yourself. If you need help, we will provide you with a tested person to provide you with that help. If you do not quarantine yourself, well, you know, if you drink, if you smoke, if you drive drunk, you know, bad things happen to you. People have to take responsibility. And we have to support we should spend the money to help the people that are vulnerable. No question about it. That will cost, you know, a couple of $2 billion as opposed to $1 trillion per month. We currently still do not have testing in the United States. Korea has had testing now for well over a month and a half. We've tested 2 people per million. 20 people per million. They test about 3,600 per million. So clearly there's a big problem. We need to test health workers. We need to test social workers. We need to make sure that only those people are working with the vulnerable people. I mean, I so many stories. Family member, heart disease, infection thanks to the idiot doctors, has to go and get an antibiotic drip every day. The person giving him the drip, not wearing a mask. Crazy, just absolutely crazy stuff. But that's what we've got. Now, something else. By the way, Korea, but especially Singapore, you should really check out how they're handling this. They issue their public with a daily report of numbers. How many people have been diagnosed? How many people have been discharged from the hospital cured? How many people are in intensive care? Every day the numbers come out. They also tell you where the infections took place. So if there's a particular area of town, you avoid there. In other words, they're taking this seriously. One other thing that I noticed that's appalling is there are a lot of good Chinese doctors in China, in Singapore, in Taiwan, Japanese doctors, Korean doctors who are on the front lines of this and have been on the front lines of this for months now. They've treated people, they've cured people, they've turned this around for a lot of people. They know the course of this disease. How many of them have you ever seen on U.S. television? Answer, never. What you do is you see a lot of so-called public health bureaucrats talking about their calculations of what may or may not happen. And then we have this Italian report from the Italian health ministry. It's crystal clear. This is a disease that kills people who are already sick. By the way, there was this recent story about, this family, and they had a family gathering, and next thing you know, 4 of them were dead, and oh my God, this is, they're from New Jersey, so, how could this have happened? This disease must be much worse than we ever imagined. None of them have health problems. Go find, I don't mean to be mean, go find the photograph of this family. There are 2 lines of people, the women in the front and the men in the back. You can't really tell exactly about the men. But I'm going to tell you right now, 4 of the women in the front line of that photograph are morbidly obese. Not just a little heavy, not just a little heavy set, not just carrying a few extra pounds. We're talking about bursting out of their clothes. That is a predictor of death if you get this disease. If you can't walk up a flight of stairs without getting winded, this thing's going to take you out. So they're creating hysteria by they're trying to find the most seemingly extreme cases. Oh my God, 4 people in a family got this and died. Well, at least 4 people in that family had really serious metabolic disease. And this was the thing that took them out. And it's tragic, and they looked like lovely people. I'm sure they were. But to say that this randomly happened to 4, healthy people is crazy. Just look at the photograph. I'm not making it up. What else is important about this? Well, they keep saying that Italy is having a really serious problem. And yes, within the borders of Italy, there is a serious problem. But what they're failing to mention is this problem is focused intensely on one specific area of Italy called Lombardy. This area has 16% of the total population, let's call it 1 out of 5, but 70% of the cases. Okay, 16% of the population, but 70% of the cases. So that means the other 30% of the cases are spread out over the rest of the population of 84%. So 84% of the people are getting 30. Well, anyway, you can see the problem with the math. 16% of the people are getting 70%, are generating 70% of the cases. So we need to look at this part of Italy. Nobody apparently is, unless I'm missing it and I'm looking at a lot of news. Here's what I can tell you about Lombardy. It is the most intensely industrial area in all of Italy. Okay, let me repeat that. It is the most intensely industrial area of all of Italy. What does that remind you of? Wuhan, the most industrial part of all of China. All right? That's significant. It is also the second most densely populated part of Italy. Wuhan, one of the most densely populated parts of China. So we've got heavy industrialization, we've got dense population. Okay? It's also both these areas are, quote, prosperous. What does that mean? It means they're generating a lot of money. But that means there's a lot of people running around stressed out of their minds all the time. So this is a high stress, high polluted, densely populated area that is producing the overwhelming majority on a per capita basis of pandemic cases in Italy. So it's not right to say that Italy is having a problem. Lombardy is having a problem. And we should be looking at that area and trying to figure out why is it that this area, which is prosperous, they've got money. Wuhan has money. It's not some backwater. These are places with resources. But they are intensely polluted. They are super densely populated. And I think that the stress factor has to be included too. Now we know that smoking among men in Wuhan very, very, very high, and most of the deaths were among men. I've been to Italy. People smoke. Like it's not like the U.S. where you can't smoke, everywhere, anywhere. You can pretty much smoke everywhere in Italy, and people do. That may also be the case in Spain, which is also having a problem. This thing hits the lungs hard. If you're a smoker, it's going to hit you hard. Also, there are diseases of prosperity. One of them is diabetes. Another one of them is obesity and heart disease, which goes along with these diseases. Cancer, by the way, is also a thing that will set you up to be killed by this virus. These are degenerative diseases. They're lifestyle diseases. They're diet diseases. So I don't know the numbers, but I can tell you this. There is no such place as Italy. Italy is made up of a dozen or more culturally different places, different diet, different pace of life, different environmental stresses, different. They're different places. So with Lombardy, you're looking at probably the highest stress area in the whole country, with the highest level of pollution, the second highest level of density, and I'm going to guess that you're going to see a high level of metabolic diseases in this part of the country. And I bet you would see the same thing in Wuhan too, because people have just enough money to indulge all kinds of bad habits. One of them is overeating or eating the wrong kind of food, drinking, smoking, and all that. The good life, la dolce vita. So we need to look at that. Where else is getting hit hard? New York City. New York City is a lot better off than it used to be, but when you fly into New York City, you see the brown air everywhere. It is an unhealthy environment, air-wise. Densely populated? Yeah. Clean? Not by any stretch of the imagination. High stress? Absolutely. And where's the majority of the pandemic cases in the United States now? New York City. So we're seeing a pattern. Somebody somewhere must be talking about this pattern, but I don't know. I don't know where. I'm going back to the Chinese issue. We have lots and lots of Chinese doctors who have treated this thing, have treated hundreds, if not thousands of people each. They are reporting things that work. We are ignoring them. Somewhere, I'll post it when I get a chance. Straight up, serious MD working out of Shanghai Hospital. They're doing intravenous vitamin C. They're saving people who have this really bad. And then we have some Stanford guy, certainly on a big pharma payroll, not a clinician, running some think tank, but he happens to be an MD, and he pushes some numbers around, and he's telling everybody, vitamin C doesn't do anything. Here's the deal. Anything that doesn't make big pharma a ton of money is discredited in the United States. Not every country is polluted and poisoned that way. Other countries still have doctors who actually have a backbone and are willing to look at and see what actually works versus what they're allowed to say works because their job depends on keeping their mouth shut. And if you know any doctors or you're a doctor yourself, you know I am telling the absolute truth. You are allowed to follow the consensus, period. You're allowed to do nothing else. I've talked about this before, standard of care. Well, I killed 100 patients in a row, but I followed the standard of care. That doesn't fly in China or Singapore or Taiwan. Doctors actually try to figure out how to help their patients and how to cure them. So to take this full circle, the plan, which is to quarantine everyone and shut down the economy, is going to cost us about $1 trillion a month. Biologically, there is no guarantee that that's going to eliminate the pandemic. In fact, there's some evidence that it's going to stretch the pandemic on longer and actually cost more lives in the long run. Instead of that, we could just be frank and tell people, look, you're obese, look, you're a heavy smoker, you got emphysema, you've got cancer, you've got diabetes, you can't walk up a flight of stairs without, losing your breath. You need to pull yourself out of the game and sequester yourself for however long it takes, a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. We don't know exactly how long this thing will burn through and develop herd immunity in the population. But however long it takes, you're going to have to sequester yourself. You're going to have to quarantine yourself. And you know what? We will help you. We'll subsidize you. You can't work. If you need medical attention, we will send a tested healthcare worker to your home. If you need, social work kind of help, we'll send a tested social worker to your house. We're going to help you. We're not going to cut you loose and make you face this on your own. But we're not going to shut down the whole economy at the cost of $1 trillion a year on the hope that we're going to save you. You will be saved if a critical mass of the population gets this thing, gets over it, develops herd immunity to it, and it just fades away. How long that will take, we don't know. But we cannot afford to spend $1 trillion per month. And by the way, if you're an employee type person, for you just walk out the door, and then when the job's back, you just walk back in. For the people that actually have to run the business or run the plant or run the restaurant or run the company, it's not that easy. It's not so easy to turn a company off for 1, 2, 3, 4 months and turn it back on again. For one thing, you're going to lose a whole bunch of your employees. You're going to lose your supply chain. You're going to lose the financing and credit that you need to keep the business going. I mean, there's 1,000,001 small details necessary to keep a business growing, surviving, forget growing. And the more time that passes, the harder it is to restart the machine. There are many, 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 many small businesses that will never recover from this. They are gone. And all those employees and the landlord and the people who've extended that company money and the family that ran the business, they're sunk. They're sunk. Multiply that by millions of small businesses, because that's how many small businesses are being affected by this. So I hope we get smart. I see someone in the Wall Street Journal wrote an editorial that was sort of along these lines today. So this is no longer considered some crazy fringe idea. It's just common sense and basic biology. It's a hard situation. It's a hard situation, and right now the government is doing what it always does, which is, we'll just figure out a way to pay for it. Well, there are certain bills that are a little too high to pay, and $1 trillion a month we can't afford it. We can't afford it. And and the terrible thing is, it's probably not even the best thing to do. And for a few $1 billion, we could quarantine in home all of the vulnerable people in this country, make them comfortable, take care of them, and we probably will end up with a much better outcome for pennies on the dollar. When the economy crashes, the way this economy is on the verge of crashing, you will see increased illness across the board. You will see all kinds of social problems, psychological problems. Lives will be, amputated, basically. People will not be able to finish school. People who have educations will not be able to get jobs even close to what their educations are for. Communities are going to suffer. Charities are going to suffer. They're not going to get the level of donations they used to get. Tax revenue is going to be way down. That's going to hit services. Everybody's pension is tied up in the stock market. That's going to be, vaporized. I mean, this is, I may have coined this. This is a economic nuclear winter that we're stumbling into right now. It's worse than $1 trillion a month. It's $1 trillion a month and setting off a economic nuclear winter that, no one can predict how long it will take to recover from. This is not 2008 and a few scammy bankers running some mortgage packaging scams. It's not that. This is not some .com scumbags, faking internet company profit results. Right? This is not long-term capital thinking they're the smartest people in the world and making a big mistake in the derivative market. This is cutting to the bone of it's not just the economy, it's life. It's life itself. It's getting food, getting seeds in the ground, getting fertilizer on the seeds, getting the plants harvested, getting them shipped to market, getting oil refined, getting oil, sent to the gas station. I mean, this is like all, some of these things you may think we should do better and we should do more ecologically, and I agree, but we better be able to do them. If you have never been to a third world country or a country that has gone through a massive disruption materially, you have no idea what we have in store. And we're probably going to end up worse off even than that. And I'm going to end here. There's a lot of countries that depend on our affluence because our tourists go there and spend money, and people come here and work and send money back to their families. That's all going to dry up too. So this is going to not just hurt, the United States and reduce the standard of the United States. This is going to wipe out people all over the world. So let's hope we get some intelligence at the top. I see glimmers of it. It may actually come to pass. And anyway, I could go on and on about this. And one last thing, I just have to say, in Singapore, on TV, every hour, on the hour, there are public service announcements from the government reminding people to wash their hands, showing them how to wash their hands, telling them what the symptoms of the disease are, telling them how to avoid the spread of the disease, telling them what to do if they have the symptoms. Okay, it's a little repetitive, but everybody can answer those questions. Everybody is reminded on a daily, hourly basis, if they're TV watchers, of these essential items. When you turn on the U.S. TV news, how often do you see any of these essential things discussed? Instead, it's a he said, she said political bullshit festival. It is sinister. If CNN and Fox and all these news outlets care so much about you, why can't they devote 30 seconds an hour to putting up a reminder about what we all need to do to stay healthy? But they don't do it. They don't do it. PBS doesn't do it. Nobody's doing it. And yet you go to a country like Singapore, every hour, on the hour, sometimes more than once an hour, there's a little commercial reminding you. We all need reminding. We're not, we can't, no one can be told something once and remember. We need reinforcement. So the outlook and the attitude and the orientation of the people at the top, I think, is crystal clear. As George Carlin said, and he's maybe the greatest prophet of our time, they don't care about you. So we all better care about ourselves and care about each other. That's Brass Check. See you next time.